Hi everyone, Stepan here. I'm going to show you a Road to GM game played last year. So at first, after finishing this game, I didn't record it immediately, then I moved and lost the score sheet. So this is a Croatian team called Jaska. We played them last season, we played them this season again. I played the same opponent. So tomorrow I'm going to show you this season's game against the same opponent, Anton Deris, and during that match, or after the games, my opponent's teammates were kind enough to send me a PGN of this game, so now I can finally cover it and there are no holes in the playlist. So my opponent is about 1850. I have played him before, he's a great guy. I played d4. And I didn't know what to expect because he doesn't have too many games online, especially with black. Now, I did my best to try and recall my thought process during this game because it had been played 8 months ago, or maybe even more. So I played c4, he played g6, I went knight c3, and my opponent played the Grünfeld. And normally against the Grünfeld, I'll go bishop g5 because I like the Stockholm variation. And knight e4 is the main move, bishop g7 is playable, but it's a bit more complicated. My opponent took on c4, and this is not a good move because it gives away e4. And white immediately builds this strong center before black has had time to play bishop g7 and castle. So this is a very, very good position for white already. I didn't know it during the game because I've never seen this before, but I knew that I had to be better. So bishop g7 and bishop takes c4. Now I have spent quite some time analyzing this game and I have checked it with the engine. This is 0.7 or about 0.7 and white just has a strong center and therefore a strong advantage. My opponent castled. And at this point I was really tempted to go e5, and I did go e5 because it wasn't at all clear to me where the knight should go. So I went e5. Of course, knight h5 just, you know, if you play knight h5, then I'm going to trap the knight with g4. I don't see a way out. There may be some tricks with f6, but I can just move my bishop back. So that doesn't work. Knight d5, of course, loses a full knight, so it's knight d7 or knight e8. And my opponent ended up playing knight e8, which is the inferior move. Knight fd7, I would have gone e6. That's the idea behind e5. And I believe this has to be taken because I'm going to take on f7 if it isn't. Now takes. Maybe king h8. And this seemed very pleasant to me. And he played knight e8, which during the game I thought was worse. So here I played a move that perhaps shouldn't have been played. It's the best or second best engine move, and it's perfectly fine. I played knight f3, but in this position it's very hard for my opponent to develop the c8 bishop. So knight e2, knight g2 would have been way better, because any bishop g4 can be met with f3 or h3, and the bishop doesn't have the ability to pin me along the d1 h5 diagonal. But okay, knight f3 is fine. And my opponent played c6, and the engine screams for h4 h5 here. I'm going to be honest and say that I never considered it at this point. So after h4, black should play h5, and now white goes e6, and this is supposed to be a winning advantage for white. c6 was just a bad move. Instead of that, my opponent should have played c5. And after bishop e6, f e6, queen b3 is a double attack, and of course an easy win for white. There's no way out of this. You cannot defend everything. Instead, I saw e6 and I played queen b3, which is fine. I mean, it's the same idea, but my opponent has time to play the move h6. And now I don't have this pressure on e7. I drop my bishop back. My opponent finally now plays e6, and I castled. Instead of castling, once again h4 is winning according to the engine. This is +2. And let's say my opponent plays knight d7. This is a variation I have been analyzing for a while. h5, g5, and now just knight takes g5. This knight is immune, because if the knight's taken, the bishop is either trapped or the king gets mated, because I have queen d1, queen h5. Now this isn't easy to see. I have not seen it during the game. Obviously I would have played h4. But if the knight's taken, h6, bishop h8, h7, king g7, and queen d1 is the end. There is no way out. You have to play something like, I don't even know, f5. It's over. So instead of that I castled. Still a big advantage, almost +2. Knight d7 played by my opponent, and here I considered knight d4, but I ended up playing rook a d1, which is also fine. b5, very, very aggressive, but it doesn't really do much. Bishop d3, knight b6. Okay, so this is the key position I would like you to pause in and try to figure out what you would do with white. I had a very long thing here. So there are a couple of ways to play this. You can go knight e4 and set up a blockade on c5. You can go queen c2 and maybe threaten to take on g6 and then also continue with h4, h5. You can go bishop b1 followed by queen c2, and then h4, h5 becomes really dangerous. You can play h4 straight away. But I saw a move that seemed very tempting and seemed to work. I can win an exchange here. What I did is very bad. A +2 advantage it is just gone after my move, but it's because I didn't see just how strong my opponent's center is going to be, and I also played a suboptimal continuation. So the move d5 wins an exchange. That much is clear. This pawn can be taken 3 different ways, but anyway you take it, I'm playing bishop c5 and I'm picking up the rook in the corner. If you move your knight now to try and, I don't know, save your rook, then I'm going to take on c6 and take on g6 and discover attack the queen. Or I'm just going to go d6, which is also pretty good, it seems. So my opponent took with the e-pawn, and I played bishop c5. And now my opponent played bishop g4. You can see that if my knight was on e2, this wouldn't have been possible because of f3. And after bishop g4, I blundered. This is still equal. My opponent has a very, very strong center, and the d-pawn is very dangerous. But if I take on f8 immediately, then I have a huge advantage because my e-pawn stays on the board. And here is why. I played bishop e2 because the rook isn't going away, but that's a blunder. After bishop e2 I'm losing. If I take immediately, my opponent must take with the bishop. If they take with the king, that's easy. Queen b4 check, picking up the bishop on g4. So they take with the bishop, and now when I go bishop e2, if they trade on f3, as was the case in the game, my pawn isn't under pressure. So I have an e-pawn, and that makes a huge difference. In the game on bishop g4, I played bishop e2. A different move order that simply loses, because now after bishop f3, there's bishop e5. I can still take the rook, and I did take the rook, so bishop f8, king f8, but now there's nothing on g4, and queen b4 doesn't do anything. So now I have to deal with 2 extra pawns for the exchange, so technically the material is equal, but my rooks are so bad that they simply don't have any open files. I played rook fe1, which is okay. Queen f6, rook d3 is also okay. I want to double up my rooks on the e file if I can. Knight c7, and in this position perhaps I should have gone a4, but I saw that my opponent's going to go a6, so I couldn't really see the point to that. I went queen c2. My opponent played knight c4, b3 chases the knight away, bishop c3, queen c3, queen c3, rook c3, and knight a5. Okay, so here I still had a chance to hold equality because my opponent made a mistake with this knight c4 idea. I can dominate the e file and simply, prevent his rook from coming in. And if we trade rooks, then my bishop and rook should be able to hold this. The engine actually gives a slight advantage to white. The correct move is rook c3. Instead I played rook d1, which is very bad. very, very, very bad. Now black is much better again. Knight e6, not a good move, but okay. King f1, getting my king into play, king e7, and g3. The engine plays bishop g4 here, although I don't understand why. It wants to provoke f5, but I guess that's a useful move for black anyway, because the king can tuck itself away on f6. So I played the g3. My opponent played king d6. I played bishop e2. He played b4, rook cd3. I should have gone rook f3, but I wanted to put pressure on the d5 pawn, especially with the rook in the corner. So knight b7, bishop f3, and knight bc5. And now I couldn't figure out whether rook d5 works. I was so upset because I thought I was losing, and I ended up discarding it after about 5 seconds. And when I was analyzing the game for the first time about a week after the game, it was so clear that rook d5 is a very, very simple draw, at least. I don't know. Usually it happens that I don't see the tactics. I saw rook d5, but I still didn't play it. So the idea is, of course, you take on c5, take on a8, and you should be equal. So rook takes d5. I mean, you have to take it. If you don't take it, then I just took a pawn. So cd5, rook d5. The king has to move, and now I take on c5 with check. If the king doesn't move to c7, if it moves to, I don't know, e7, then I just take again. And after takes, and of course this should be a draw, but I would take white, because my bishop's better than the knight. I didn't play it. I played rook d2, and now I'm busted. From here on, it's a relatively easy conversion for black because the pawns are just marching forward. My opponent played rook b8. I don't know why I played bishop g2. I don't even remember. I think I was trying to prevent knight g5 and knight e4 coming with tempo, and maybe I wanted to play f4. Okay, f4, f5, rook e1. It doesn't really matter what I do from here. I have two extremely inactive rooks, and I'm basically down 2 pawns because both knights are better than either of my rooks. Nice pawn exchange by my opponent, and now there are 2 connected passed pawns on c and d. Now there are 3. I think I had to take, and we played about 10 or so more moves, and I resigned. My opponent's technique was really, really nice. Obviously there is no game to be played here. The king comes in, and my opponent picks up another pawn, and now I'm just waiting to get mated and for my opponent to promote. At this point I was just playing out of inertia. I didn't... Of course I knew I was losing, but sometimes when you're losing you keep making moves. And after c2, king a1, and knight d3, I finally gave up and resigned. Coming back to the position that actually matters before d5. So the reason I was really, really upset after this game is that I had a massive advantage. It felt like a massive advantage. My opponent couldn't really move any of the pieces. The knight on e8 is stuck defending d6 because knight e4 is coming. g6 is weak, and I can play h4, h5. I have this long diagonal. I have ideas to play a4. I have ideas to plant the knight on c5 and prevent c5. Basically, if I don't do anything, if I just play it slowly, there's nothing my opponent can do. f6 seems suicidal because g6 hangs. I have no idea what black should do. A simple move like knight e4 is good enough. Although bishop b1, I mean, what do you do against bishop b1? Because if the knight comes into d5 and takes on e3, then I just play fe3 and the f-file is open for me. I don't know. Really a tough game, and I'm sorry I've delayed covering it for this long. Not a good game. It took me a while to recover. In any case, you're going to see our recent game played about a month ago tomorrow. Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for more chess. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.